Millions of Americans cast their ballots Tuesday in elections across the country. In Ohio, voters weighed a constitutional change that would guarantee the right to abortion. A gubernatorial race in Kentucky pit the Democratic incumbent against his Republican attorney general. And Virginia voters were tasked with electing their local representatives in the state legislature. Joining me now from our Washington, D.C. bureau is Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes and Senior White House and Political Correspondent Ed O'Keefe. I'm very happy to be with both of you. Ed, I'm going to start with you. Abortion rights are an issue, obviously, in Ohio, as we've reported. More than what's at stake with the law, which we've discussed, what are both sides looking at politically in terms of what they can read from the outcome today?
How much more politically can either side get from the abortion debate? Democrats certainly hopeful that if the restrictions that have been proposed are cut off, that it's a sign that perhaps they can try to get something similar on the ballot in other big battleground states next year to help juice turnout. Republicans or those that are opposed to abortion access certainly hoping that they can prove a point in a big, increasingly red state like Ohio, that their side can prevail and that the restrictions are wanted by at least the majority of Ohio voters. But it's a sign and a reminder that a year and a half since the Roe v. Wade decision was tossed out, it remains a potent issue and one that clearly continues to turn out people in ways that sort of defy normal patterns that we've seen historically in terms of turnout and who exactly is voting and what they're voting for.
Nancy, in 2004, George W. Bush was on the rocks and brought up the cultural issue of gay marriage, tried to push a constitutional amendment to block it as a way of juicing vote in his Republican Party. Is there any discussion within the Biden White House about the issue of abortion and part of what Ed was talking about, and using and having the president talk about abortion rights as a way to improve his situation, which the polls show isn't so great at the moment?
I think everyone in the White House is well aware that this is the animating force for Democratic voters right now. The question is President Biden the most potent messenger on that issue? You know, he's someone who has had his own personal evolution on abortion. He's not the most natural individual to be talking about the issue. He isn't necessarily that forceful about it. They've put the vice president out on the road a lot to talk about it. In fact, at one point, she was doing an event related to women's health or abortion almost on a daily basis. So they recognize that she is a much better communicator on this issue. But what they're watching for in these elections that we're watching unfold right now is it still as potent of an issue as it was in 2022 when there were 6 ballot measures in states across the country and abortion rights advocates won all 6 of them? And we're talking not just about blue states. We're talking about red states like Kansas and Kentucky. Can they ride that wave into 2024? That's why they're watching Ohio and Virginia so closely.
And I'll stick with you, Nancy, before going back to Ed. It's often the case that incumbent presidents who have a low approval rating get dragged into races where they really don't belong. Has there been any race that the White House sees where President Biden has been a part of the political situation, or is he pretty much not on the ballot, as they say in the elections today?
Well, you know, what they've been trying to argue to me this week, John, is that all the bad polling that we've seen for him lately is meaningless because we're still 1 year out from Election Day. In fact, they argue that what is a better indicator are all the races that we're seeing play out right now. Actual elections where you see are Democrats animated, are Republicans animated, which issues are driving them to the polls. They insist that that is going to be a better yardstick for how he will do in 2024. But they're well aware that he's got an uphill climb, at least according to the most recent polls that we've seen.
And finally, Ed, Virginia. Let's say Republicans take control of the state Senate and add that to the state House. So they got the governor, got the whole shooting match. What are they likely to do, and what might it mean politically?
4 big things. First of all, they would enact Governor Glenn Youngkin's promise to put in place a 15-week abortion ban with the usual exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother. Permanent corporate tax cuts, something Republicans have been seeking and can't enact with Democrats running part of the legislature. Limits to a 45-day early voting period, and then tighter restrictions on transgender students in schools, one of the big cultural issues that got Glenn Youngkin elected in the first place. If he can do all of that, Glenn Youngkin will be seen as an idea master in the Republican Party and somebody perhaps destined to run for higher office in the future.
Nancy Cordes and Ed O'Keefe, thank you both so much.
You're welcome.